Hey guys, welcome back. So now getting into the origin of the Grim Knight. Like, this is one of those things that I thought of, okay, we kind of get the gist of it. We know how he came about and why he uses guns, to which at its core is only slightly different from Earth Zero Bruce Wayne. But with this one shot being released recently, that tells us so much more about how so many things happen differently after. It is like a textbook butterfly effect. Like, there's a reason why this guy has no Joker in his world. So now let's break this down. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so with our recent talks on the Batman Who Laughs playlist, we've talked a bit about the Grim Knight, and the little bit that we've been told about him thus far has mostly been from the Batman Who Laughs, and then on top of that, we've gotten a little bit more from his encounter with Earth Zero Batman at the time when the Batman Who Laughs had sent the Grim Knight to retrieve James Gordon. And getting into the origin of the Grim Knight, it picks up right after that encounter, at a time where Earth Zero Batman wasn't necessarily at his best, and he was also seeking counsel from James Gordon Jr. to figure out where the Grim Knight had taken his father, James Gordon, because he wasn't sure which path under Gotham he was going to take, and there simply just wasn't enough time to figure it out via process of elimination. But as it turns out, the Grim Knight ended up taking James Gordon to the passageway under the sewer tunnels of Crime Alley. And so initially you would think, okay, so why wouldn't Batman just go to that one first? Being that it's under Crime Alley, you're dealing with two different Batmen, of course they would take it there. Like, it just seems like the obvious choice. But I wouldn't lean all the way into that, because of course it does sound like the obvious choice, but with this being orchestrated by the Batman Who Laughs, who at his core is Batman, he could have very well made the obvious choice, with the obvious choice being Crime Alley, just a setup for Batman to go to, just because it sounds like it's too on the nose. And picking Crime Alley for the Batman Who Laughs is just like your classic 3-card Monty. So where the hustle is, when the stakes are high, you never go with the hand that's leading you. And by picking Crime Alley, the Batman Who Laughs just pretty much said, this is where it is. And when you're dealing with someone this smart with this much on the table, there's just way too much to lose to be wrong. And so for the Grim Knight, for obvious reasons, coming here to Crime Alley with James Gordon, it immediately triggers the memories of his childhood, because much like Batman, his parents were also murdered here as well. But in the case of the Grim Knight, the way that this went down in the dark multiverse, after his parents were killed and Joe Chill was looking for Martha's pearls, he dropped his gun, scrambling through the alley trying to find them, and while he's looking for the pearls, Bruce sees the gun. Bruce picks up the gun and he kills Joe Chill in that alley. And the crazy thing is that from there, Bruce continued through the years training with assassins around the world, but in this case actually implementing the part of the whole killing part of the assassin thing. And throughout the years, it pretty much plays out like your traditional Batman origin. And there are parts when I initially read this where I was thinking like, okay, why didn't Batman do that? And not to condone the decisions of the Grim Knight, but in so many ways the origin of the Grim Knight almost seems like the original origin, with this reason being the more fight fire with fire kind of logic. And in hindsight, maybe just to me, but in hindsight it makes Batman's origin seem more like an alternate reality. But I also gotta say, as far as the Grim Knight, when it came to that legendary moment with the bat flying through the window, which is more or less your iconic moment for Batman, when he's like, okay, bats are my thing, just connecting it with the history with his father and the caves and the mansion. But when this moment came about for the Grim Knight, and he just simply shot the bat that flew through the window and he said, yes, father. For me, once again, and maybe it's just me, but for me, this took me more so back to Dark Knight's Metal, back when we had got Batman Lost and Bruce had confronted Barbatos in that same iconic window. And referencing Metal is like using a reference of a reference, because altogether it just echoes this legendary moment. But what stands out to me about that moment in Dark Knight's Metal is when Barbatos told Bruce that he is the Bat, and that he had molded all of these circumstances and pretty much crafted Bruce to be who he is. So to me, it's like when we see this with the Grim Knight, it's almost like, dang, Barbatos, you picked the wrong one. You know what I'm saying? Like, this Bruce would have been down for everything that Barbatos was trying to do, which one is the reason why I feel like the Batman Who Laughs has kept him a secret, to the extent of why he wasn't with the other Nightmare Batman. But when he responds here like, yes father, I shall become a bat, it almost feels like he's referring to Barbatos versus Thomas Wayne. And I'll be honest, it could be me just looking way too deep into it, but I gotta say that is 100% the vibe that I got when he said that. And there's countless possibilities to the ways he may have known Barbatos prior to meeting the Batman Who Laughs, or at the least introduced to the idea of his existence, and possibly through the beliefs of other assassins. But that's just one of those moments I'm just putting a pin in my mind, because I feel like I'm not gonna be able to let that go no time soon. But as far as this Bruce Wayne, after becoming Batman in his world, he didn't bother with criminals for long. He took them out. He killed the Penguin, he killed Black Mask, he killed Killer Croc, and the Grim Knight even recalls a time that he faced off with a criminal at Ace Chemicals who wore a red hood, who he had also taken down as well, to whom we all know had he lived, he would have eventually become the Joker. But on this world in the dark multiverse, this Batman didn't bother with it, and he ain't know nothing about a Joker until he met the Batman Who Laughs. Like, this guy didn't even get a chance. And so for this James Gordon, it was a tough sell trying to get the police department to stop this Batman, because many of them were like, he's doing our job for us, and many of them just believed that these criminals had it coming anyway. So what this James Gordon did is he paid officers to help him spring a trap for Batman, who we now know as the Grim Knight, by building a bat signal to get his attention and draw him in, only to use that as a distraction to stage an ambush. And man, did it work, because like any other Batman, he did come to the signal, and when he got there, man, he was pissed. And mainly because when he got there, he already knew what this whole setup was, and he came prepared. And even though James Gordon was clever, because he also rigged the bat signal to be a magnet to pin the Grim Knight down, so it would hold him still and they would have time to unmask him and take him into custody. But the Grim Knight was like, no, I know all of these crooked cops' names, which is something James Gordon thought he was bluffing on, because he spent all the city's slush funds on Wayne Tech in order to hide their identities, to which little did he know that is exactly how the Grim Knight knew who exactly each and every one of them were. And because Gordon had pretty much handed all of their identities over to him by way of Wayne Enterprises, the Grim Knight already got Kill Tech embedded in their vests, like ready to go. And he takes them all out, only leaving Commissioner Gordon. And this is one of those things that we've talked about a couple of times on our Batman Who Laughs playlist, because the Batman Who Laughs has told us before, the Grim Knight has told us before, that he uses Wayne Tech in every way imaginable. Remote vehicles, bullets that shoot bullets, still waiting for that. But if it has any kind of technology in it, he's using it to his advantage. And once again, in some ways that you would think that Batman would have some sort of version of using himself, and not even so much to a lethal extent, but I would say just closer to the extent that the Grim Knight has reached out to. Because take like satellites for instance, or even street cameras. So now Batman, in your traditional sense, he would use those more so towards an investigation, use the satellites or the street cameras to find where a criminal is, or more so follow them to the leader of their organization and then take down that organization. But the Grim Knight, no, he uses the cameras, he uses the satellites, and pop, they gone. Like, that's it. And in his world, because of this, the criminal didn't even get a chance. Like, I could just insert that 6ix9ine meme like everywhere, like, stupid, you ain't getting a chance. But because of this, criminals are beyond terrified. The Gothamites are grateful, but Alfred, on the other hand, who sees this up close every day, at one point just became fed up, and he left knowing that he could just trigger the explosive that's implanted in his neck. But Alfred didn't care. He said, do what you must, and the Grim Knight just let him go. But also at this point in time, for like the past 6 weeks, Jim Gordon has been off the grid, and doing so because he knows, one, he's on thin ice with the Grim Knight, and the Grim Knight has eyes everywhere, but also because Gordon wanted to figure this out and take him down by the books. And when doing his investigation and doing it completely unplugged, and I'm talking about lanterns, typewriters, scotch tape, and paper, completely unplugged, he eventually figures out that all these resources point back to Bruce Wayne. And after figuring this out, he gets a warrant signed by the mayor to order Bruce Wayne's arrest, into which the mayor in this world is Harvey Dent, to whom half of his face is disfigured as a direct byproduct of the Grim Knight. And like initially he had told Harvey, like, if you know it's him, like if you know it's Bruce Wayne, why don't you just go up there and get him? But Gordon wanted to completely do it by the books, one, to prove that the books work, but also because he needed help in the background to take down Bruce Wayne's contingencies in order to truly isolate him and take him down. And in the process of doing so, we find out that James Gordon had also got help from Alfred, who had cooperated with the police, giving them critical information and disarming codes and pretty much everything they needed in order to take the Grim Knight down. But what's pretty amazing here, when James Gordon goes to arrest Bruce Wayne, Bruce initially reaches for his gun, but James Gordon takes him out. Like, he beats the mess out of him. And for this Bruce Wayne, it's a bit of public humiliation. But I also feel like on top of that, it's showing us so much more about the Grim Knight versus Batman, to the point of where specializing in guns has become the Grim Knight's weakness. And as far as Batman, we talked about before, earlier on the Batman Who Laughs playlist and also on the Death of Nightwing playlist, that Earth Zero Batman, he can shoot too. And I'd say even perhaps not as well as the Grim Knight, but because Earth Zero Batman is not a murderer, and he's that hero that would rather take the bad guy in alive. That is a task that requires much more skill, and not just to the point of where you're not trying to kill people, but to also make sure you don't get killed in the process. And as far as fighters go, in between the three, between Batman the Grim Knight and the Batman Who Laughs, I would have to put the Grim Knight at the bottom of that list. And not just because he got beat up by James Gordon, but more so to the fact that your Batman Who Laughs, he's been your righteous Batman, if you will, for the majority of his life, and he's possibly the most similar to Bruce because of that. But as far as switching back to Earth Zero with the Grim Knight who has our James Gordon held captive to activate the Last Laugh protocol, this trip down memory lane, it agitates the Grim Knight to the point of where he's about to kill him. But of course this is stopped by the Batman Who Laughs because Jim Gordon is needed in order to fulfill their plan in its entirety. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Man, I kind of feel like slowly but surely we're seeing some weaknesses in the Grim Knight, much like a lot of the other Nightmare Batman, to where some of their crazy advantages also come along with some crazy weaknesses. But let me know what you guys think down below, and we'll do it again in the next one. Alright, later.